Okay, let's get started. Thank you for joining. Again, my name is Emiliano Conde. I'm the president of jBilling, and I wanted to present to you how is it that we do account structures in jBilling, and to an extent, how is it that we're going to be doing it in future releases that we have the code ready and the functionality is it's being tested, and then we'll document and package and release. So these are known features that we're going to have for example, jBean 3.4. And originally we had as the scope for this presentation company hierarchies. However, um, I I am moving the scope a notch higher, so it's going to be company hierarchies, but we're going to address other scenarios that um, go hand in hand with company hierarchies, and we're going to take a look to those because they are all related and they are all trying to model things that happen in the real world with companies that have customers or companies that have subsidiaries or companies that have resellers or have different brands. All these things that eventually make for sometimes a complicated scenario. How is it that we go about to represent this in with jBilling? So that's the idea. These are the main scenarios I want to present. All of these scenarios go beyond the typical one company that has a number of customers, and that company sells products, sells services, sells subscriptions to those customers. Those customers get an invoice, and then they submit payments. These scenarios go beyond that. These scenarios include um, the company having sales representatives or having other companies that sell to customers and get a commission from the revenue that those customers bring. Also, sometimes there are resellers that buy from the company. We can call that the provider. So the reseller is buying from the provider, and there are many resellers potentially. And those resellers then send those resellers find customers that purchase that, but the resellers um, really actually send an invoice to the customer. So the customer is buying from the reseller, and the relationship between customer and company is between the customer and the reseller. And in that case, the provider is mostly like a wholesale operation. Then there is an similar scenario, but a little bit more complicated, and that's where that reseller um, cannot invoice the customer, doesn't have the billing system, doesn't have the structure, doesn't have the infrastructure to provide to calculate and send an invoice to the customer, although the customer expects an invoice from the reseller. So in that case, the provider, the wholesaler, needs to send an invoice on behalf of that reseller to the customer. Then we have companies that just sell different products or the same product under different brands. Um, and those brands, the customer thinks that the brand is kind of like a company, but really it isn't. It's just a different logo, and the invoice looks different. Potentially the pricing looks different. The company has many of those brands. Then we have companies with subsidiaries, or other scenarios where there are many companies, but they are all um, there is a higher entity up there that knows about these subsidiaries and can control them and see what they are doing. And last but not least is the multiple independent companies, just companies that they don't see each other, they are totally independent, and but they all want to sell from the same billing system. So all these scenarios, as you can see, some are rather complicated sometimes to understand. I hope you don't understand many, because we're going to dig deeper into each of these So no worries about right now having a good understanding of all these scenarios. But as you can understand now, these scenarios present a challenge to the bidding system, because the bidding system needs to know who to invoice. Um, is it the reseller, or is it the end customer? How is it that that invoice has to be presented? What kind of pricing should we use? Because it might not be the same if the customer is expecting an invoice from one company or another company. Is there a commission involved? What kind of visibility between different entities as far as the data goes? Can company A see what company B is doing or not? So lots of challenges, lots of business logic, lots of complexity to be addressed. Let's start with sales agents and the partners that get a commission. So this scenario, what it is that you have a company, and our company will always be Acme for my presentation. So Acme sells satellite phones, or rents them and service them, and it has a number of sales representatives. You can identify them quickly because they are dressed well. You see, they are all very neatly dressed with suits and stuff, and they sell to people that don't dress that well, like these three ladies here. And so they are selling that to them, and because of those sales, they get a commission. Um, they work for Acme, or maybe they work for many. Potentially, if that's all they do, they go selling services to different people. So these could be fairly independent people, really, these sales representatives, or they can be employees of Acme. Really, we don't care a whole lot about that. What really matters here is that um, we have to set a commission for each of them, maybe at the product level. So Peter might get 5% on this type of phone, but 7% on a different type of phone. And other Linda here might get a different commission than Peter gets. So all that is what we need to keep in mind. So what is it that jBilling does in these cases? Um, there's a difference between jBilling 3.2 and 3.3, what they do as far as agents and partners commissions, and what jBilling 3.4 is going to do. The current release simply has commissions at the partner level or the agent level, and that's it. So you cannot give a specific commission for a given product. The newer one that we will release in the near future, it does have that kind of granularity. It goes beyond that as well. You can limit what each of these sales agents can sell. Some agents might not be able to sell some products, and then it calculates a monthly commission for each of these agents. Agents can actually bring other agents and get a small commission on the sales that those other agents do. So there's agent referrals as well. So let's take a quick look now for my for showing this. I do not have the newest build of jBilling, but at least you'll have a sense of how is it that partners work here. I have partners in this menu option, and when I create a partner, let's create a partner. When I create a partner, in this older version of jBilling, I simply give a percentage or um, flat commission to a partner. So I can say 10%, and is it one time or not? And this is a little bit of an interesting scenario with what we are doing with partners and agents, because we are phasing out some functionality in the new jBilling. Although we are incorporating a large number of new features, especially on how to determine commissions, how to calculate them, and so on, we are not keeping a balance of how much this person is owed. And in the past, we will have a balance, we will have a payout period and a payout date, how often this person has to be paid. Now we simply calculate all the commissions that this person needs to be paid for a given period, and that's that. We do not need to track a balance that we found that is unnecessary and brings a lot of confusion to our customers. So we decided to remove it after many years of having that. It was never a popular thing, but it's a complex thing to put in place. Also, the when that is the case, jBilling needs to track payments to those agents, to those partners, which is complicated as well. So Thomas Smith, you see, this is a partner, and it has a number of customers, actually just one, and it has a percentage rate, and it is identified as a different entity in the system. It's not a customer. It's not a billing administrator. It is identified as a partner. Or we are actually renaming this as agents. When I create a customer, if I go about creating a customer here, customer 2, then I can select the partner that I want this customer to belong to. And let's see if I have I'm afraid probably already created that one. Okay, let's have 2. Why not? So you see customer 2 now belongs to a partner. The related partner is partner 1. If I go to this partner, I can see that it has 2 customers, and we can see how much money, how many commissions this person is owed, when was the last time it was paid. We're removing the payment part, but we're enhancing the commission part, and I can just take a look to which customers this partner has brought, so I can go take a look then to each of these customers, any the payments, the invoices, and so on. The partner also can also log into the billing system and check this information on his or her own. Great. So let's move on then to the next scenario, which is resellers that invoice their own customers. So these resellers have they have enough infrastructure, they have the systems in place to be able to invoice directly their customers. They don't need the provider. In this case would be Acme. They don't need Acme to produce those invoices. We are assuming that Acme runs jBilling, and we don't know what those resellers are doing. We don't care really, because they don't need us to. We don't. They don't need Acme or jBilling to produce those invoices. They will just get an invoice from Acme for the wholesale price, the wholesale charge of whatever each of these 3, Wave, Blast, and Wind, each of these 3 resellers are selling. They will get an invoice, but then each of them will simply send an invoice and get paid. Wave pays Acme, and the end customers pay Wave. Acme doesn't know, and therefore jBilling doesn't know how much each of these resellers are charging those guys, the end customers. However, jBilling does know about each of these customers. It knows, and it could easily give the information to Wave about the usage that each of these customers have had in the last billing cycle. So if Wave sold a phone to Peter, then Acme will invoice for that phone, and it's going to. It could, at least, it has the information, and jBilling has the functionality to segregate each of the charges, each of the customers, end customers, the charges for each of those end customers. So here, therefore, we have a scenario where there are other billing systems in place, and jBilling might need to send a file, let's say to Wave and to every reseller with the information that then they will use to produce the invoices for the end customer. So how is it that we represent this in jBilling? So resellers are represented as parent accounts, and each customer is a sub account that belongs to a reseller. So this is functionality that jBilling has had for a long time, for many years actually. There isn't anything new in jBilling 3.4 that allows for this type of scenario. It's a fairly simple scenario that can be addressed with just a hierarchy of accounts within jBilling. All the customer charges are rolled up to the reseller, so the customer never gets an invoice, but the customer is represented in the billing system. And then the reseller gets invoiced by Acme, by jBilling, because the reseller for jBilling is simply a customer. It's a customer. It's a big customer, and the reseller then pays directly the wholesaler, the provider that is running jBilling. Of course, then the reseller has to take care of invoicing their own customers and also to process payments, um, follow up on invoices that haven't been paid, do all the notifications. Everything that a billing system needs to do still needs to be done for each of these resellers. So let's see if I can quickly create something on those along those lines. So let's call this reseller 1. And allow sub accounts. This is what is going to make my reseller a reseller. Otherwise, it would be just a simple customer. And we'll call this reseller. And pay attention to this part, because you see that it's asking me for first name, last name, and middle initial. This is not good. I would like this to be different. I would like this to be the company name and maybe the location, maybe some kind of region or geographical region or something that is relevant to a reseller. In this configuration, I don't have it, but this is something that we'll get back later, because it's something that we can address well with account types. So I will call this Wind Mobile, and I'll leave it at that. So now I have reseller 1, and you can see that it has 0 children accounts. So if I add a sub account, this would be an end customer. It would be Peter, and you can see that the parent IDs has been set to reseller, and I will leave this flag off, because otherwise Peter would get an invoice. I don't want Peter to get an invoice. I want the reseller to get an invoice for everything that Peter buys. The good thing about having the end customers represented in jBilling is that then we can process usage, process CDRs that are guided directly to the end customer. So jBilling knows that what exactly Peter has consumed in a given billing cycle, and then because it knows that, it can bill the wholesaler explaining that Peter bought this much, and the reseller will need that, because the reseller needs to have the necessary information from Acme to produce the correct invoice for Peter. So otherwise, the invoicing part here will be very difficult for Wave, Blast, and Wind. And Acme wants to make it easier for these resellers to operate. If he has the information, Acme wants to send the information in a easy to digest way, so the resellers can do their job well. Okay, so now we have a very different scenario in a way, although it's the same. It's the same as far as that there is a layer of resellers in between Acme and the end customers. However, now the resellers are very thin, just marketing operations. So Acme will invoice them, of course, because that's the wave, blast, and wind. That's what they um, are reselling Acme's services and products. So Acme needs to invoice them. Same thing so far, but it is Acme that will have to invoice the end customer. So Acme actually has to send two invoices for the same charge. Not two invoices, but it has to put the same charge into two invoices. One invoice will be the wholesale invoice for the resellers, so it's a pretty big invoice, and then many little invoices for the end customers. And those little invoices now have to be like coming from the reseller. It has to have the logo and the invoice design, the name, the address, and so on of the reseller, and payments instructions to pay the reseller. But the payment is processed by Acme, but deposited directly into the bank account, say, or the merchant account for credit cards that these resellers have. That is basically doing using jBilling to do the billing for all these companies. And although they are independent, jBilling does know about the relationship between these companies, so it can do a good job at preventing duplication and making sure that all the charges are correct. Of course, this introduces a lot of more complexity because the the there is the there is things like if I'm going to process a credit card payment, who is whose merchant account should we use? Is it Acme? Is it Blast or Wind? We need the to process payments correctly. We need the invoices to be calculated correctly, presented correctly, and so on. Plus, there might have different Wave might be operating in Portugal and Blast in Germany, and they have different taxes, so different business rules. Now jBilling has to take care of the billing of all the companies. So what we do in these cases, we 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 create a structure of companies, and this is new. This is something we didn't have up to jBilling 3.4. We had the ability to create many companies. However, these were completely independent. As in jBilling 3.4, we can flag companies as root companies or sub companies that have some kind of parent company above them that can do lots of things. So since the resellers then are companies within the bidding system, we can set up plugins for them that do not affect the others. So one plugin for one reseller will be just running for that reseller, and that plugin then can process payments, or another plugin can present invoices or calculate taxes. So they are in a way separated enough that we have lots of flexibility to do to comply with all those requirements that we saw in the previous step. However, at the same time, we have a company that is above um, all the companies, and that is important because that company needs to sometimes say, well, Wave, you sell these three products, Blast sell those three products plus this a fourth product, and Win can only send one product. So um, there's a lot of things that might be managed directly from the top level company. A classic example of this in the mobile telecom industry is an MVNE at the top level and multiple MVNOs. operating under that MVNE. So the MVNOs, if they are very thin, and yeah, they are mostly just marketing and sales, potentially customer service, but really they don't have the infrastructure to run a telecom company, let alone the network. The network it's run by the MNO. So we have an MNO, then an MVNE that in this case would be Acme running jBilling, and then multiple MVNOs that don't need to worry about billing or CDR processing, payment processing, delivering invoices, and that type of thing. That particular part, how is it that they look like as sub companies? Because this other scenario, which is companies with subsidiaries, is addressed in a very similar way than the previous one. The scenario is the following: Acme actually operates under different subsidiaries. So it is. I don't want to say brands because that comes later and it's gonna be confusing otherwise. But there's many sub companies that Acme has, and Acme um, simply wants to sell for marketing reasons or for geographical reasons at times, right? It could be that there is Acme Canada, Acme US, and Acme Macedonia. So it needs different entities, and again, these entities might have different taxes, different prices, different currency, different language, all sort of differences. So but they are all belonging to the same company. The big difference between this and the previous one is that Acme does not need to invoice the resellers, in this case the subsidiaries. It doesn't need to, because um, it's something that Acme is just an accounting thing. Acme then to book the revenue or to repatriate some profits or whatever they want to do. It doesn't need to send an invoice to get that. It's an accounting exercise. But on the other hand, it does need to send invoices, each of the subsidiaries, to the end customer. So in this scenario, we also use sub companies just like the previous one. The only thing we don't need is that invoice from Acme to each of the resellers. So companies can be arranged in a hierarchy just like the previous one, and I will take the advantage and show you in one shot both things. And then the root company has total visibility here for what are those three companies doing. It can determine, it can have a general catalog of products and services, and then select which of those products are sold by each of these sub companies. It can have inventory that is shared, for example, and or not. It's optional. And but then each of these subsidiaries are completely independent. They get paid independently. They get their own business rules, plugins, payment processing, and so on. Okay, so now I will quickly show you this, and because this scenario is one of this solution with sub companies is what brings the company hierarchies, which was the original scope for this presentation. I want to go a little bit deeper than the previous scenarios. I will briefly show you on the system how this works, and then I will go through a few slides that are strictly on company hierarchies. So let's take a look. So as you can see, I have a number of companies here, and I think that Airwaves Wholesale is the root company. I could be wrong, but let's give it a try. So my root company, yes, it is, because my root company looks slightly different than my UI has different information. For the first thing that you see is that each of my customers have a company name now on the as well as the rest of the information, because it is important to know that this customer is actually belonging to Smart Cell Retail, and this is belonging to Connected Retail. While this one is directly belonging to Airwaves Wholesale, which is the root company. So there you go. When I click, I can see that this belongs to this company. Otherwise, this would be irrelevant because if it is just single company billing, then to show the company all the time, it was always the same. It makes no sense. But when it comes to this company hierarchy, it makes a big difference. When everything now that I do, it has the company as an option. For example, if I want to create a new customer, I have to say two things: which kind of account type it is, but also which company is going to belong to. It might be to one of these two sub companies or to the main company. So let's say I do it to connected retail, and now the connected retail though might have different account types. And then I proceed with my customer creation. Here you have a quick example of how different data shows up because of the different account types. That also affects products. Remember that global set of a product catalog, and then I determine some of those products should be sold by some companies and not others, or maybe it's a global one. So here I have three products, and the products, there's some that are global, some that are for more than one company. So if I select my product, I can see it here, and you can see that this product is just a normal product. It's just simply that can be sold by multiple companies. I can copy the product, I can edit the product. It can be sold by a smart retail. So when I have a scenario with multiple companies, with a hierarchy of companies, I start to see all over the place the company. I see it in the product. I see that when I create customers. I will see it when I do anything related to accounts. To assets. So if an asset um, should be shared or not, all those are important considerations. I'll switch quickly presentations to 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 look a little bit closer to the company hierarchies, because that's very important, and I will make sure this is big. So company hierarchies, as you saw briefly, what happens is that we can have root companies, child companies, and customers that belong to any company. This is extending what we currently have as multi-tenancy in jBilling, because today we already have the concept of multiple companies, but this is what we have. It's just totally independent. It's multi-tenant. You log in, and each company has its own customers. But in jBilling 3.4, we're adding the hierarchy mode. Um, the hierarchy gives us a degree of independence as we had before having company hierarchies, but also a degree of integration between these companies, because we need to um, we need to manage all those companies potentially from a root company, or a company that sits on top of all of them. There's a lot of things then that the root company can restrict those children companies. It can restrict the number of products. It can restrict the pricing, or set the pricing. The root company has a lot of power. They basically can do everything they want, but it doesn't need to, I don't need, when I am in the root company, I don't need to go log in out and then log in as a different company. I can do that all from the same session. As you could see here, I am logged in with the root company. However, if I click here on the impersonate, I can select to just become the billing administrator of any of my children company. So if I do like this, now I am Retail Inc. That's the company I am now, and these are the products I can sell, and these are my customers. And when I click here, I say, well, I want to go back to being the root company. Now I see all the customers, and I also see the company name. You can see that kind of switch quickly from one part of the hierarchy to another. So this is what you have seen so far. Airwaves is the wholesale, and we have these two sub companies. And this is what we've seen so far, that we have the company name. We can filter by company. That's new too, because before it didn't make sense to filter by company when you only have one company. And we can click on the impersonate to actually take a look from the root level view. If I add a new customer, I need to select which kind of user, which kind of no, which company this user will belong to. Then I can do just like as usual. I can create customers, create orders for those customers, process payments, or generate invoices and so on. The impersonation is what we just saw before. And I can go back then to be the root company. We also saw that. But when I am a child company, I do not see anymore that extra column that is the company, and I don't see the filter by company name. I go back to just single company view when I am logged in as a child company. Products can be shared, so the same product can be sold by all the companies or some of those, with some or all the child companies, is that a product can be shared or make available. So a product category or just a product could be global, meaning everybody will be able to see this and sell it, or it can be restricted to just some companies. This is something that could be that is not something we've decided to build just because it looks interesting or it's fun. These are real requirements from MVNEs and the other wholesalers we are implementing jBilling today, and the requirements came directly from them. Of course, if you pick global, then everybody can see that category. Everybody can see um, that product and then sell it. Or if you pick a specific one, like if you just say Smart Cell can see the the this particular product, then let's take a look if that's already set up. Maybe I'm lucky. So if I select Smart Cell and I see products, so I see this particular one, which is obviously a Smart Cell product, and nobody else can sell it. That's good. Well, there's more to it, combination of things. Let's move on quickly to assets, and I don't want to stay too long as well, because um, I want to have a hard stop in 1 hour. I don't want to abuse your time. Shared assets. I hopefully some of you were there when I presented the asset management webinar, and assets basically are everything that you want to track individual units. For example, a DID. or um, an actual physical phone or a router or a SIM card. All these could be tangible assets, or they could be more of a virtual asset. However, they all need to be tracked individually, and that's something you can do with jBilling. The concept of company hierarchies is affected by that, or vice versa. Assets then understand the concept of a company hierarchy. You can share assets across many companies, and then manage the availability of that across companies. You can say, well, this is a global asset, or no, this is an asset that is only for this particular company. So here's a quick example. Um, we have a bunch of Samsung Galaxy phones in the system. If I sell it, then nobody can buy that again because it's already sold. That's the main concept of an asset. However, with company hierarchies, I can just say this particular asset cannot be sold by anybody but this specific company, and that's a way to restrict the inventory at times. All right. Pricing is very important because I can have a price that is a wholesale price, and then a price that is at the end customer price. Remember that scenario where I had a situation where I needed to put the same charge in two invoices. One is for the reseller, but one is and another one for the end customer. So here is how that is done. The I can have a wholesale price for I have the same product, but that product, if I price it at the root level to one value, that's going to be the price that the resellers will have to pay the wholesale company, Acme. Then I can go and for each of my resellers have a different price. That's the price the end customer will pay the reseller. So in this case, you can see that there's a markup of 200 and of 300 when it comes to the resellers. And then how is it that we have that charge twice? Well, what happens is that the reseller, which is in a way the retail of the company, what it does is it does sell to the end customer, and that means that there is.
We were talking about resellers and how is it that we manage to invoice them both in one shot. So what happens is that in order for the reseller to sell, they create an order for that end customer, and then that order is going to generate an invoice. So at that point, there is a plugin in jBilling that will generate an additional order, but is going to be is going to be done at the root company level for the reseller, which is a sub-company of the root company. So eventually we have basically two orders. One order that belongs to the end user at the child level, and one order that belongs to the reseller at the root company level. That's how, although it is transparent to everybody involved, that's how under the hood things work. So you can see here that when SmartCell generates an invoice for a customer for $28, then automatically jBilling for the root company that is Airwaves is going to create an order for a SmartCell for the exact same product, but is going to use the pricing that we set at that wholesale level. So we're going to have the same charge, the same product, which is whatever smart cell sold, once at $28 for the customer, and again at $20 for smart cell. And I would say that's probably the most complex scenario that we have to deal with, because it kind of has to double invoice for the same thing, which is always painful to implement that in a billing system. It's almost breaking a very important rule, that is never invoice twice for the same thing. How is it that we manage to implement that in a clean way? Is through company hierarchies. Technically, we are not invoicing twice for the same thing. We are duplicating that cell automatically at a different level in the company hierarchy, and then invoicing for that, and then is the reseller that pays for that. So I'm pretty happy with the way we managed to do that. Okay, so let's move on then to global reports, and that's going to pretty much do. So yeah, the one thing that is important after all is that can we run reports? But we need to run reports for more than one company. If I am at the root level and I want to run how much has been invoiced, I might want to run it for one company or the other company or all the companies. So that's something that we have included as well in the company hierarchies. Company hierarchies has affected, therefore, a number of areas of jBilling. It has affected products. It has affected customers, because customers belong to a company, and we need to give that option when creating a customer if it is being created from a root company. And as well, reports and assets. All that now had to be changed slightly, so so we can address the fact that we might be running. We need to do that in a global way or for a specific company. Great. So let's sum up to the part of company hierarchies, which addresses the two most important scenarios that I was showing you. You have global billing management. You view from a root company, and you can modify everything you want. You can then configure products and assets to share things and define what is it that each of these sub-companies can do. You can configure the pricing at the sub-company level or at the top level, so the right price is used when invoicing end customers, or when the wholesaler is invoicing the reseller. And then you can give the reseller a complete service of billing on behalf of that reseller. Great. So I still have a couple of more smaller scenarios that I will go by quickly. The first one would be a company with multiple brands. And you might be thinking, well, wasn't that covered by the subsidiaries? Well, yes, and you could just do multiple brands with subsidiaries. That's okay. However, we could have Acme that sells satellite in a simple way without having subsidiaries. There's the Acme Cool brand for the teenagers, then the Acme Business for the business people, and the Acme Marine for those that want to venture into the high seas. Brave people that might not have the right boats to do that. But still, if you don't have the right boat, then it's more likely you'll need a satellite phone to ask for help. So Acme wants to address all these markets, and it doesn't want to set up subsidiaries or anything like that. It just wants to basically market them under different brands, different pricing, okay, and that's that. So there is a difference, because the payment is just processed by Acme. It doesn't want to. There's no different business rule as far as taxes or how much time you give the people to pay. Well, or maybe there might be a few differences there, here and there. But the, if the situation is multiple brands where most of the difference is just really the brand and how the invoice is going to look like, then one can solve this with the account type functionality of jBilling. The account type functionality, this is something that there is a different presentation only about account types. But what you need to understand more than anything else here is that, you see, if I go to configuration and I create a new account type, what is it that I can define as an account type? Well, I give the account type a name, so this could be marine, in our example. I can tell, well, these guys will be invoiced instead of, well, it could be monthly or others if I had configured other periods. But when is it that they are going to be invoiced? Well, on the 15th, or they could be on the 1st or whatever. Which invoice design is going to be used? So the marine guys get a different looking invoice than the others. A credit limit, a currency, a language, how they are notified when the balance is going through some threshold, and how are they going to get the invoice. Those are the things you can change in a brand. So you can see that I cannot change the taxes, I cannot change that type of thing. Those things are at the company level, and I don't have multiple companies here. What I have is different account types. So if you can see that my business is using this type of, once I have my account type, I can start giving information sections or blocks, and to capture different information depending on the type of account that this is. So a business might not have first name and middle name, really. It probably will have organization name or company name. While residential, yes, it will have. These two have been copied. That's why they are the same. But in any case, the important part here is that brands don't need the complexity and the added configuration and overhead that multiple companies have. Keep in mind that when you have multiple companies in jBilling, you have the flexibility of giving them different plugins, but that is also an added complexity. You need to deal with the configuration of those plugins. And one company might do well while the other one has some error in configuration, and you have to troubleshoot that. With account types, if there is something in between, and in many cases it does just fine when it comes to having different brands. Account types also can have a different set of products. So, if you have some product for businesses or for marine, then that same product cannot be sold to the Acme Cool that is for teenagers. So you might have different products and limit those products per brand. You might have different prices per brand. All that you can work through account types. And last scenario, the last scenario is the easiest of all, and it's been with jBilling since version 1, which is simply to have different companies in the system. If you have different companies that are completely separated, they cannot see each other, they don't even know about each other, they might even be competitors for that matter, but you want to run them all in one instance, that is totally doable. jBilling is multi-tenant. It's as simple as that, and each company, in this case, each of them would be a root company, so therefore they cannot jump from one to the other, and therefore they have their own invoicing and payment. They could probably compete for the same customers, or maybe not. They don't need to do the same thing. They could have, this one could be a hosting company and this one could be a cable company, so really they might not be selling the same thing. They are completely independent. then because they are independent, they don't know about each other, so don't expect reports that cover all the companies. Don't expect to have some kind of way to create products for each of the companies from the same session. No, you need to log out from one, log into another company, create the product there, log out, log into another company, create a different product, that type of thing. So the advantage of this is that you can save on your operation cost because you can run all these companies from the same jBilling instance, even if they have different plugins, even if they do payment processing a different way, even if they notify the customers. Everything can be different, and everything runs in the same instance. Okay, so that's that, everybody. I want to thank you very much for your interest. This was a presentation with a lot of people and a lot of questions. That's appreciated. Thank you very much for your time, and let's do this again for some other topic in a few weeks. See you soon. Bye bye.